This is the Data Slice, hosted by the Data Science Alliance. This is where we sit down to talk all things data science, AI, and tech, any way you slice it. I'm Kellen Hobman, and joining me today is Dan Shea. He is a board member with the Lucky Duck Foundation. And today we're here to talk all about how data science can be used to really create positive change in our community. So Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
We're excited to have you. You have a lot of experience in our community in San Diego, so excited to hear your insight and experiences. Like we said, you're a board member with the Lucky Duck Foundation. For people who might not know, could you first just tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. The Lucky Duck Foundation focuses on helping to alleviate the suffering of the homeless in San Diego. And although the Lucky Duck Foundation originally started in about 2004 with a couple of friends of mine, Peter Seidler, who bought the Padres back in 2012 or 13, asked me a few years later if I'd help him with the homeless situation in San Diego. And long story shorter, I finally agreed to it. We actually had to get educated and learn what's the problem, why isn't government taking care of it? And then combined, asked our friends, Pat and Stephanie Kilkenny, if they wanted to merge their legacy foundation with Peter and my efforts. And that's how we came to be Homelessness for the Lucky Duck Foundation.
Amazing. So what exactly does the organization do in terms of programs and resources?
So we have studied the issue extensively. We work with everybody in town, a lot of political people that sometimes goes well and sometimes doesn't. And we try to find ways to help people who are on the verge of homelessness not go into homelessness, who are on the other verge of homelessness on the streets but can easily get out. And we help find employment opportunities and fund jobs for them and so forth. And as it's grown over the years, we have funded, I can't even tell you the number, a lot of programs to hire homeless people to give them a start, get off the street. And we found a sleeping bag jacket about 6 or 7 years ago, which is a winter coat thing, and the pants to the sleeping bag rolls up in the back and tucks in. And we found it, and we thought it was interesting, so we went to the company in Detroit that makes them. And they were a small company. It was founded by a college student who then hired only homeless people.
Oh, wow.
So everybody that makes these coats are homeless, and we took to it, and they sell them worldwide. And we at the Lucky Duck Foundation and here in San Diego have become the largest distributor of their jackets in the world.
Wow.
That's how many we buy every year.
And that number goes to show how big of a need there is every year.
It's a never-ending need.
Mm-hmm. Well, so you also at one time were the CEO at Feeding San Diego, one of the local food banks here.
I've been with Lucky Duck for many years, and when COVID hit, they needed some help, and I went in as an interim CEO while they did a nationwide search. And I went in as a 3-month interim and left 3 years and 3 months later after seeing the need, especially during COVID and the amount of people that had never had to go to a food bank before. We had to take the systems and make them a lot more than they were. And through that, eventually met DSA, obviously. But so it was an important, as many were at that time, important nonprofit in the community that needed some help. So I continued doing my volunteer work at the Lucky Duck Foundation and took that organization and ran it for the next 3+ years.
You've been very involved with our community all around.
I've lived here almost 40 years. I've been engaged since the beginning, a lot of political stuff and watching the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's a changing landscape.
Definitely. Well, so you mentioned during your time with Feeding San Diego is when you met DSA, the Data Science Alliance, the organization nonprofit that hosts this podcast. And DSA is partners with Feeding San Diego and another local food bank, the Jacobs and Cushman San Diego Food Bank. The project is a predictive dashboard using data to help optimize those operations to better serve people in need. So what was that like for you to see that project come to life and see data being used in such a big way to make an impact for people?
So the way that came about is I met Tan Air through yet another association and heard about what he was doing with one of his ventures, and it caught my attention because he talked about using data for good, and to use data for good, you have to have good data. And it captured my attention right away. One of the things about having two food banks in San Diego was that they both started about the same time, out of need back in 2006 and 7. But they didn't really work together or cooperate together. And I saw an opportunity to see if DSA could bring that product that they were talking about to both food banks and help them cooperate better so we could better serve the community. And that would mean, are we overfeeding one zip code and underfeeding another zip code? And then DSA talked about predictive analysis and so forth, which helps us really get a longer view in the supply chain of the food, where it has to go, how it has to be moved. And it took about a year plus to get it together. But for the first real time, the two food banks started working together and were able to have a lot of cost efficiencies and feed a lot more people.
What kind of impact do you think the data project truly had on people? I know you just mentioned it helped feed more people. Do you think it did make a bigger impact after bringing in that data science?
It did, but the most interesting thing, and from my point of view, exciting thing, is that this will go on this was a setup of looking 30 years down the road to be able to understand with changing populations and changing demographics what San Diego might look like all those years down the road, and give us a chance to plan for it before it was people showed up, they moved here, they moved there, and then you made new decisions. And with this software, we can predict that they're going to go into certain zip codes more than likely, and that gives us a planning process 5, 10, and 20 years out. And if they don't go to those zip codes, it's just a couple of keystrokes to say where they're really going is here, and adjust on the run, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a big deal for San Diego and in the food insecurity business.
Another issue that San Diego sees a lot of, that Lucky Duck Foundation is super involved in, is homelessness. Is this type of data science something you think could benefit the homelessness issue here?
I do, and we're just in the beginning stages of exploring how that can be done. So with the work that Peter Seidler and I and the Kilkennys have done, we clearly know everybody in town with regard to the issue, the service providers that take care of it, the politicians that have to help make decisions, and can talk to them about what's necessary. And I see that as a bigger part that excites me about San Diego. Actually, I had said at one time to DSA, if we can do this right in San Diego County, there's 58 counties in California. If we can do this right in San Diego, there's no reason it can't go to the other 58 counties. But past that, we've got 50 states, and not everyone has 58 counties, but there's 30, 40, 50 plus in each state. And it's organizing data in a way that makes everybody more efficient and gives the opportunity to create efficiencies, cut costs, be able to do more, feed more, take more homeless off the streets. And there's not enough good data. And then it extends to the political side, because you listen to political leaders and they're all well intended, but they take numbers that are more, in my humble view, they're more picked out of the air, and they talk about what they think it is as opposed to what real data there is. But in some cases, there is no real data. So if we take the power of what DSA can do and turn that into, where does the data reside? What's credible data? And that's the key to everything, is what's credible data, and how do we format it in an electronic sense where it can be pulled every month, and you can begin to see the peaks and the valleys of where it's going, as opposed to we think it's here and we think we're doing good there. I think it's going to revolutionize a lot of things. And that was the first part I picked up on. The food banks, just because I was at one of them, just happened to be the first place to start. But it's endless to what good data can do for everybody.
It's very exciting. You mentioned good data. Could you talk a little bit more about what that means and kind of what you're looking for when it comes to good data?
So when it was first explained to me about what your founder, Tan Air, thought about good data and with his background and experience, I knew instinctively what he meant. But after learning about the commitment to good data, it's no good if you just put data together and you're picking from sources and you're not sure if it's real, good, not good, what somebody wants it to be. So good data just means it's got to be right, it's got to be good, and we've got to present it in a way that gives others an opportunity to do better in all of our communities.
So, with the homelessness sector, are there any specific roadblocks or challenges that you're seeing when it comes to doing something similar to what happened with the food banks?
Well, there are only two, well, let's call them service providers, two food banks. So it was actually a lot easier to do that. In San Diego, there are multiple service providers that all do something with homelessness or sometimes do different things with homelessness. And the figures that are quoted about how many homeless and where they go and what the demographics are, it depends on who you're talking to. And let's say I have to make this up because I don't remember. Let's say there's 30 different sources you go to, and everybody's convinced that they are the only ones that see it, right? And until we get it organized well enough where everybody agrees the standard for the data and how it gets collected, and then have it done electronically, so when you change employees, it's not somebody comes in and has to learn a new job. The template is already set up, and you just need to put the data or make sure the data is going to where it needs to go. So that's in the very, very early phases, but it could be life changing for a lot of people.
So, it's kind of narrowing in on the source.
Yeah. And the right source. There's plenty of sources out there.
True.
So, if politician A wants to say, I see life this way, and politician B, C, D, and E want to look at it differently, the public is always confused about who's right. And if we can set a standard for what the data should be and what it means and gather it correctly and electronically, I think we begin to change the face of that world.
hmm Are there any specific steps to take or changes to make that you think could help get there?
The key thing is getting key people who can help make those things happen to understand what that means. We live in a world where everybody says, oh my gosh, of course, data does everything, but they still operate off of data that maybe isn't correct in a lot more cases than you'd think. If we can get this set up and organized in a way that says, but here's what the standards and the rules should be, and we're going to collect it based on that, I think we can help change a lot of things quicker, but it's in the very early stages.
hmm Are there any ethical roadblocks as well? I know there's challenges to, almost just logistically getting that done. Are there any kind of ethical considerations that you think need to be made?
Sure, there's a lot of ethical considerations, such as you don't allow people's names to be used, you don't talk about a location, nobody can have access to the private information that even the homeless are entitled to. So all of those things, and those are not hard to fix, by the way. In today's digital age, all you need is a phone and an app that records and says, "Do you give permission to use your voice as your identification?" And there's so many tools out there that's been around for a long time in banking and healthcare and so forth that already helps to make it easier, but it's just not organized yet, at least in the fashion that I'm thinking of.
hmm Are there any ways that you think people local to San Diego, or like you said, we can even talk about this on a much bigger scale, but is there anything you think people can do to support the efforts to get there with the data, whether they're in the data science field or not?
The public can support it by demanding to know that the information they get is good. So once again, when you have a politician saying crime is down in San Diego and we're the largest big city in the largest, biggest, and safest city in the United States, I get asked to come on the news and say, well, we're told that we're the safest city. for anybody that's been downtown or in other places around here, it's not. Homelessness isn't getting better; it's getting worse. It should be getting better, but by being able, I'll give you an example. So I got a call one day saying, so and so politician went on and said we are the biggest, safest city in America. We're not like Chicago, New York, or San Francisco. And I said, well, it's just not true. Crime isn't down in San Diego. And they said, how can that be? It's being reported. And the difference is that crime isn't down, but the prosecution of crime is down. So they take all of their things that help make them look better, and they show, well, last year we had these statistics in these areas, and now this year we're way better off, so we're safer. We're not safer. We're just measuring data differently. And that's the key to getting good data. You have to know what people are saying, not take it for granted that just because they say it, it's correct. We've got to go to the root sources and figure out what is fair and reasonable and good to focus on, and then make sure, or attempt to make sure, that politically everybody gets on the same bandwagon, because we make it harder for them to make claims that right now are easy to say, well, I don't know, so-and-so said this, so-and-so said that. So we have a lot of that going on. I think that's one of the biggest things that good data can do for us.
Mm-hmm. Kind of what you were saying earlier of having a source, that one source where we all agree.
a trusted source, and one that doesn't change because somebody changes the job or somebody has a new, politicians come and go and they want to look at it differently. If we can establish that baseline where we know this data is good because of where it's coming from and how it's put together, and we protect that as as an important source, that's where you get to make better decisions. And then let's go on from homelessness just into general business. I know lots of businesses. I was in the private sector for 40 years. I know lots of businesses that will take information from any place, especially by larger companies and employees who want things to look a certain way, and they get a mix of what's right and what's wrong. And even some of the large companies in the United States need to solidify that good data source so even the people at the top know what's right and what's wrong. And believe me, they all think whatever they have is right, and that's just not always the case. And not just always, not as many times not the case. Mm. So we make better decisions by having better data.
A lot of the Data Science Alliance community, a lot of our viewers, audience for this podcast are students studying data science, getting ready to enter the field. Is there anything you want, kind of the next generation of data scientists to know when it comes to kind of the power they have to enter the field and use data for good?
Sure. I would tell them that they can change the world. The last couple of generations of data scientists have clearly changed the world. And I would say this, there are many, many good stories out there. But if you read Elon Musk's biography that's out there, there's a bit of craziness in it and a bit of head scratching in it, but a dedication to absolutely changing the world. And, he's attempting to do it. He's failed in some ways and he has successes in others.
Success and failure, but no matter what, there's change coming with data science.
Yeah, and it's done with data scientists and engineers, but with mindsets that they want to get it right. They want to do it right. And, we're getting better and better about how we do things. And that's true with, what he's done with Tesla. It's true what he and Bezos is doing with their little space race. And NASA now is going to them for doing it right because the culture is so different. But it's the new generation of data scientists that are going to change the world, along with engineering and some other things.
Right, it all ties together, but you
got to have right data.
Yeah, definitely. It's such a rapidly evolving industry, like you said, all the time. There's things changing, which it's hard to keep up sometimes, but it's exciting. For other organizations that maybe deal with other societal issues, we've touched on food insecurity, homelessness, but there are all sorts of nonprofits, organizations working to help people in different ways. So, regardless of what their mission might be, do you have any advice for organizations that maybe want to look into using data the way we've been talking, but maybe don't know where to start?
Sure. And as a plug for, because I believe in it, as a plug for DSA, if they don't know how to start, they ought to go to DSA and have a conversation and say, how would we do it? How else do you start anything? If you go out and try to research it yourself and nobody's really done it that way before, and there's a lot of good people using data for the right reasons, but there's a lot that are unknown that they think they're right, but they're not. But I think how you positioned your company and what attracted me to it was that you have data scientists and young data scientists, and the big connection you have with UCSD is very impressive. Uh, those are the young people that can help better understand how to get there. And on the nonprofit side, we can help them learn what's important, and they can help tell us how we could do it if we're going to do it right. So it's kind of a two-way street. But this goes to corporate America also. I think they're further along on the corporate side than nonprofits are. It's more important on the nonprofit side, in my humble opinion. But it's important to, for-profit America to get it right also. And that's kind of a Musk story. He was so driven by getting things right and making sure that the data was correct. It's really made a difference on the race for space and for the car company.
Do you have an ultimate dream? If there were no roadblocks in the way, no challenges, what do you think would be the dream world in terms of using data to solve these issues?
Well, the dream world is individual to so many people. So I look at what I've done. I was in private equity for 40 years. Peter Seidler got me interested in the homeless stuff. So my dream world is making sure people are fed, getting homeless people off the streets, following the data and the statistics so we know what really worked and what didn't. And that all comes with good data also, and the results of what you use that good data for. So in my dream world, it's feeding people, getting them off the street. We got to do better. In other people's worlds, it's going to be for a lot of different reasons. And it's going to be for profit, and for profit on the private side for the right reason drives to change the world, as opposed to the one thing I love about what Bezos and Musk are doing on the space side is they've helped, not totally, but a lot, pulled it out of the hands of government, where the systems were, you only did a cost plus thing. So you're incentivizing them to run the bill up for as long as they possibly can without necessarily the kind of results you need. And in the new world of Musk and Bezos, and I'm just using that as an example, they're using it to be, tell us how much you'll pay us to do it, and we'll figure out a new way to do it. And they're actually being successful, admirably so.
Even though, like we said, there are challenges and things like that, work is being done. We are on our way. Data is being used to create positive change, as you've shared with us. How does it feel? You're pretty on the inside seeing that work done. How does it feel to know that data is being used to change people's lives?
To me, it's amazing in that the first time when the PC first came out with the 8088s, I think they were called, with the dual floppies. I got one, and I want to say, I could be off by a year or so, but 1982, I bought one and got lost in it and was making up stuff at the time. How do you use it? Got lost in how to do it. And I spent one 24-hour period without even knowing the 24 hours went by. I was so engrossed in it. But learned how to use it to advance the idea of collecting data. Now, fast forward a lot of years since then, and where we are right now, I can't even keep up with. But it's a changing world, and the more years that go by, the faster it changes, and the different places we can go and what we can do. So I have a lot of hope for this next generation, especially the ones who are getting educated in it. And as young people today, I think I'll get myself in trouble with some of my peers, but the younger generation is more focused on doing good than maybe our generation did. We were just trying not to starve to death. New generation has new tools, new capabilities, and they're using it. They're attempting to use it for good. I predict this will be a fantastic tool that's created here, and I also predict it'll go nationwide, but it has to be proven by enough models to make sure that it's going to work the way it's supposed to.
Well, lots to keep an eye on is a big point made. I think so much is happening, but of course, so much has already happened. So we appreciate you, sharing your insight and experience. For the Lucky Duck Foundation here in San Diego, are there any specific ways that people can support the organization or get involved?
Sure, we've got a website if you just want to begin looking at what does it do, what does it mean. It's called all one word, lowercase, luckyduckfoundation.org. You can take a look at the various initiatives we're involved with and the things we do. And of course, everybody wants money. Write us a check, write us a check. There's not enough money for all the stuff we need to do. But really, what I encourage people to do, especially new people coming into it and trying to test the waters, and even more especially younger people, there's a gazillion opportunities to do some research and help. So not just our organization, the food banks, other nonprofits, for especially data science type people, but really for people who just want to do something good, a lot of volunteer work. And, so I've created something called Skilled Volunteers. If you have a skill, whether it's in data science, finance, supply chain, whatever, instead of all of us having to raise more money in order to hire the people you need, there's people out there that are willing, especially come across a group in the life sciences industry that say, we've got time, we just want to do something good. So we line them up and ask them to do a project. I just yesterday met with a young lady who just graduated from Notre Dame with a degree in finance. And she did a piece of work for me a couple of years ago, non-paid, didn't want money for it. And she said, just give me something. So we're going to start her off in a new project. We need young people to take on work that we can't afford to pay people to do, because it's either feed people or spend the money over here. The money needs to be spent, but the double-edged sword is you can't stop feeding people. And that's on the food bank side. But on the homeless side, there's a lot of work we have to do yet, a lot of research that, and so she's going to actually do another project for me based on our conversation yesterday. And it's your generation that's going to change the world even more and faster than what my generation did. And I wasn't a data scientist, so I can't even lay claim to having done that. But, run good businesses, run them honestly, use good data. It's a formula for success. Cutting corners is not a formula for success.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, getting on the podcast and giving advice for future data scientists, other nonprofits. Super important work all around. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
If you like this video, give it a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Plus, you can follow the Data Science Alliance on all of your favorite social media platforms. And don't forget, the Data Science Alliance is a 501c3 nonprofit that you can support. You can do a one-time donation, a monthly or annual donation by becoming a member. You can volunteer your time on our projects, or you can attend our events. We have them happening all the time here at our location in San Diego, California. You can learn more on our website, datasciencealliance.org, but otherwise, we'll see you here next time on the Data Slice.